Hey guys, Brian here again with AutoHowToVideos.com. Today we're back working on our project Chevy. What Willie B is going to be showing you today is how to fix some front suspension parts. We're actually going to go over how to check and diagnose different suspension problems and when you ever get those squeaks and wobbles that a lot of people find. A lot of people are really scared to tackle some front suspension stuff, so we're just going to show you how easy some of this stuff is, how you can check it, and what the right tools you're going to need for the job. So I'm going to turn it over to Willie B. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave comments and ask questions, and enjoy.
Hey guys, Willie B here. Today we're going to talk about some front end steering linkage components, kind of how to check them and what they look like and what you're looking at. We'll go over the basic components here. You got an outer tie rod, an inner tie rod. This is your adjustment sleeve. You got your center link or a drag link. They can be called several different things. You got your idler arm, Pitman arm. That's pretty much it for your steering. You know, of course, your steering box here, and you have a steering shaft that runs up to your steering wheel. They're really easy, usually, to diagnose and replace. Mostly basic hand tools, few specialty tools, but most of the time you can get by with regular tools. Best way to check steering components is just grab a wheel, shake it side to side. If you see any play, like such as this, and you got an inner tie rod play, and you also have your idler arm pivot play up in here, these are going to need replacing, and you do have a slight amount of play in your Pitman arm over here. Today we're going to talk about replacing the Pitman arm and the basic tools you need to replace it. Okay, first thing to do to get your idler arm off, you want to take this nut off right here that holds the Pitman arm to the center link. And after you get that off, you'll probably run into one more problem, and that's going to be the joint that comes out of this Pitman arm is actually tapered, and it presses into this center link. There's several different ways you can get that off of there. You can either use a pickle fork and jam it in like that and beat on it with a hammer, and that'll usually separate it. The only bad thing about using a pickle fork is it almost always destroys your grease boots, which pretty much makes them not reusable at all. If you do need to reuse the components you're taking apart, you can actually take a hammer, put your nut back on here just to protect the threads, and actually strike the joint right here. And it will distort, just a little bit, distort your center link, and that will actually jump right off of the Pitman arm. That's the way I always do it. I find it the easiest, and it never tears things up. As you see on this one, we already got it taken loose. So next step's going to be take this large nut off here, get the appropriately sized socket, and be sure to retain your nut and lock washer because they almost never come with these. Now, this right here is a Pitman arm puller. You can get these real cheap. You can get real cheap ones, you can get real expensive ones. You can rent them from your local auto parts store, but they're extremely easy to come by. What you'll do is, and go. Okay, now once you have your puller mounted up here, just run it in by hand, and you'll notice that there's a hole in the center of this shaft to line this puller up with. Now, one thing you want to note is sometimes these Pitman arms, this one here will go on 4 different ways. Well, you want to make sure that you clock this one at the exact same location that this old one's coming off. If not, you'll have your steering wheel way off and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of eyeball it, look where your splines are, and you'll want to put that back in the same location. And you can usually get these off by hand with a hand ratchet, but man, it sure is a whole lot easier with an impact wrench. All right. There it is. before I put the part on. This is called your Zerk fitting. It's what you'll use a grease gun, put on this fitting so that you can grease this joint. They're usually a 5/16. Once you got that tight, if you have a difficult time fighting this center link to drop down, you may want to disconnect your idler arm at the center link as well. It'll make it much easier on getting it out. Of course, I don't like to do things too. And once you line your splines back up correctly, kind of start it on there with a hammer. Grab your lock, washer, and nut. And scream it back on there till it stops. Or you can look in your service manual for the proper torque specifications. Alright. And last but not least, this one's a little, sometimes they change the type of nut. The last nut was a locking nut. It was actually pressed to where the threads were tight. This one's not like that. This is just your traditional castle nut. And you'll have a cotter pin that comes with your kit. Tighten that up. Line it up with your hole so you can get your cotter pin through. Put your cotter pin in. Bend it over. And last but not least, you can either lubricate it with a grease gun like this. You'll need to lubricate it with a grease gun kind of like this. You can either lubricate it before you stick it on. I usually prefer to lubricate it after you get it on because your seals are tight right here. That way it retains grease much better after it's installed anyway. Okay, after you've greased all your new joints, ensure everything's tight. Get in and test drive the vehicle. Of course, anytime your front end or suspension or steering components have been removed or taken apart, I do recommend you go into a shop and have them to perform an alignment on it, especially after you replace with new components. Alright guys, well, this truck here gave us a little bit of problems. It had been involved in a collision and actually bent our Pitman arm a little bit, but every scenario is different. But be sure to check out our videos and rate, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and then check out autohowtovideos.com. Summon a bitch.